Hello, everyone. I am Linda Majani, Associate Director of Second Decade Programs, currently serving the classes of 1997 through 2006. Welcome to the Leadership Lunch and Learn webinar, the brainchild of the class of 2004. We thank you for joining us today. The topic for today is networking for career success. We are excited to hear from retired senior lecturer Brian R., class of 67 MPS 71, as he discusses tips, tricks, and best practices for networking. Later tonight, there will be in-person gatherings for second decade alumni, that's classes of 97 to 2006, in New York City from 6 to 8 p.m., and in San Francisco between 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. These events have been sponsored by a grant from CATO, the Cornell Association of Class Officers. This webinar will be moderated by Grant Stansberry, class of 2004. Take it away, Grant.
Hi, everybody, and special recognition and shout out to all my co-staffers, Cornell Health Society folks, and great to have you here. Thanks as well on behalf of Brian. Special shout out to everybody on the line. Brian Earl's class of 67 joins us with a large level of experience inside of coaching, mentoring students in the areas of communication and networking. He has many awards, as you can see on his bio, but the one he's most proud of is his award for most influential teachers through the Merrill Scholars Program. Really enjoys these kinds of things in terms of giving back and giving tips and advice on networking and etiquette. So we're really pleased to have him with us. On a personal note, outside of his experience with Applied Economics School, as well as communications majoring, his wife Jody and he are celebrating their 50th anniversary. So congratulations on that. We all wish you all, both the best and happy celebrations. What I wanted to acknowledge rather quickly, just that we did receive a number of really great questions from everybody. So thank you for that. We will find a way to make sure that we involve those questions into our conversation as we go. But please feel free to type questions into the webinar chat as well, and I'll make some notes as we go, so to make sure that we address as many questions as we can that are around the subject of networking. Also wanted to acknowledge that we definitely saw and made ourselves familiar with all the Red Sox comments. Thank you for those, and all different types of shout outs to Brian in terms of his former students. So thank you for those as well. Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Grant. I was really pleased to see so many former students sign up for this. And my wife made me promise not to mention the Red Sox, so I appreciate Grant bringing this up. I almost wore a Red Sox tie, but I didn't want to offend anybody. But for those of you who signed up, I'm really sorry I can't see you in person. I will be at my 50th reunion this year, so any of you who are interested, please sign up for reunion and wander around and see if we can hook up at some point. As far as doing this without an audience, I'm a little bit at a loss, because I always have an audience that I can insult a little bit or at least pick on, and now you're all out ether space, so I can't do it. But of the questions, there were a couple themes that showed up over and over. One was, how do you get started? And another area that we'll cover as we go along as best we can is the notion of how do you, as an introvert or as someone who is a little bit shy, how do you work a room or get involved in a room? But as far as starting networking, remember you have a wonderful Cornell connection. Your classmates, your affinity group members, people that you were friends with. So the first people you should go to as a potential networking companion are those that you know well. And that also includes relatives, friends of the family. I mean, if you have a famous CEO who's a next door neighbor and you grew up with their kids, ask them if you can put them on your list, and it'll certainly look impressive to those that are networking or networking with you. I'm getting my PowerPoint up on the screen here. My technical director is here. Thank you. There it is. All right. So first of all, networking has really been researched a tremendous amount. And that research shows that it's a key strength of successful leaders in every endeavor, not just business, but not-for-profits, government, any place that you have a leader, there's a network surrounding them. However, most people don't really understand the process and tend to shy away from active networking. But the process is simple and involves no unusual skills or magic formulas. And I really want you to do it, because when you get into it and really get involved, networking is rewarding and really enjoyable. The value of it, I threw a few quotes up. President of the New York Stock Exchange, every job I've ever had, I owed to networking. And if you look at that article, he goes through all the jobs, and the New York Stock Exchange one was a result of a network contact that he'd maintained for 5, 6, or 7 years. The Harvard Business Review article, this one shows how women especially need to work a little bit harder in networking because they don't have the same extensive networks that men have. In the references in the back, for many, many years, I've recommended my female students go to the Catalyst.org website. They are especially interested in the promotion of women. Whoops. What happened? Oh, I moved my thing. Anyway, they're working with a potential improvement of the status of women, and they're right on Wall Street, so they do a lot with the finance community. Another book that I love to cite and I've used in class is The Luck Factor, a scientific study of the lucky mind by Richard Wiseman. Wiseman was like the Carl Sagan of science in Great Britain. He actually received an award, a nationwide award, for his simplifying science for the common person. But in The Luck Factor, he talks about lucky people. It's not by chance. They build and maintain strong networks of people that support them and help them as they go through the process. But there's some other ones that I thought were really valuable to students, and that is adopting a relaxed attitude toward life. Don't get too tense, don't get too uptight, and good things will happen to you. And being open to new experiences in their life. Just think of a change as an opportunity, not a disaster, not a negative thing, but really an opportunity for you to do something else. But why are we so poor at this? We tend to associate networking with scary, uncomfortable events. It's a little like speech fright for many of you who have taken my classes. We have a sense that we're faking it to make a positive impression. We may feel unclean. The Administrative Science Quarterly article actually talks about the Lady Macbeth effect, where you're trying to wash the blood off your hands when you go to a networking event afterwards because you feel like you've been a fraud or some sort of insincere person. Other evidence of the problem, this is from a Harvard Business Review professor. Even when people know networking is beneficial to their careers, they often don't do it. And this, again, is a great article, and I encourage you to look at it. She goes on to say, if you focus on what you can offer in a relationship, it may be a more important mindset to have, and it removes some of the feelings of inauthenticity. So here again, as you prepare to network, think about what you have to offer. And all of you have to offer an Ivy League education, often in departments which are cutting edge and doing really exciting, new and interesting things. And you also have youth to some extent. The older generation appreciates the wisdom of youth and the excitement and energy of youth. So that's another thing that you bring to the table as you go through this process. So again, studying how to frame events in a positive light as you prepare can really help you out in this process. I'd like to go into some of the specifics. when you're going to an event, and I'll pick on Cornell because the Cornell events are so well done, you can always go and get who's coming list. Check that list out, review the names and affiliations, do a little research on some of the individuals you might really want to meet. All of that will help you when you get there. The first impressions, we all know this, but you know, don't go immediately from the street into the event because the wind may have done something strange to your hair. You might have a pigeon dropping on the back of your jacket that you missed. Makeup can be messed up. Ties, wrinkles, there are all kinds of things that could have happened to you as you progress to that event. So straighten yourself out and be set. Always have business cards, but proper etiquette is ask, may I give you my card? Don't just thrust them in someone's face. And those of you who do international activities, you know that internationally there's very specific protocols in different countries as to how you use a business card and how you receive a card. So be sure you know that as you go through the process. One of the questions we had on business cards was, in some industries, particularly the high-tech ones, the notion of using a paper business card has really disappeared. And instead, you send your card back and forth digitally. However, I encourage, even in those industries, have a paper business card, because you can use your business cards to write a note about somebody on the back of one of your cards and stick it in your pocket. You also don't have to be wandering around hanging on to a smartphone or some sort of digital product as you go through the meeting, so you can be sure and exchange cards. So I'm still old-fashioned enough to believe that a real business card is an advantage. Other aspects of first impressions: dress slightly better than you need to. Conservatism is a dress virtue, particularly in the business community. So if you're going to be around older, previous generation executives and individuals, they tend to be more conservative. They're not going to walk in clogs and no socks. So, whoop. And this is interesting. We didn't move enough, so the room turned the lights out. I'm going to have Amanda or somebody wander around in the background so that the lights stay on. All right. But remember, if you're not sure what the dress code is for an event, you can talk to the event planner, first of all, and see what they recommend. But you can layer your look. Every one of us can wear a jacket over something. You can always take it off. For the men, you can take off the tie and the jacket for a more casual look. But if you walk in your cutoffs, there's no way you're going to bump it back up to a jacket tie event. This one is a fun one for me. Men, it's better for your socks to match your shoes. And these days, people are wearing funky socks. They're wearing shoes that don't necessarily match the suit. Well, why I say this is you don't want to attract attention to anything other than your upper body and your face. So you don't want people looking at your feet because, wow, that's really an interesting option of socks and shoes. And the same for women. You don't want jewelry that's distracting and leading people to look at your charm bracelet or look at your earrings rather than paying attention to you. So the idea is focus always on you as you go through the process. Also watch your nonverbal communication. You want to stand up and sit up straight. Don't slouch or kind of bring your head into your chest so you look like you're not confident or comfortable. And another reason to get rid of your smartphone is so you don't doodle and fiddle with it or do games or check Facebook and other things during the event. Remember, the event is for you to advance your career, advance your professional position, and not waste that opportunity. Every time I've gone to a conference for my profession, I don't hang out with the Cornellians. I try to make friends with individuals from across the country and learn from them, ask them about their classes, ask them about their research, and I've kept in touch with some of those people for years. So keep that kind of mindset as you go into the event, but really concentrate on meeting the people and not staying with your friends or hanging around the free food and drink. We had several questions about the elevator pitch, just asking if I could explain it a little bit more detail, or asking about what a good elevator pitch means. And remember, the origin of it is you step in an elevator with someone that's important, and you have 5 flights or 7 flights or 10 flights in that elevator to talk to them. So a minute or 2 minutes maximum. But remember, an elevator pitch can help you in a social situation, an event, as much as a career one. This is a slide of my oldest son, Evan. He's been part of the excavation of 3 mastodons in New York State, including the Hyde Park mastodon that was in Mastodons in Your Backyard on the Discovery Channel. And while he was doing this, and even for a significant period after that, he said, if I bring up, did you see Mastodons in Your Backyard on the Discovery Channel? And if they said no, he would say, well, I was in it and we were excavating a mastodon in Hyde Park. If they say yes, then he gives them the same bit. He said it's good for 20 or 30 minutes of conversations about dinosaurs and mastodons and mammoths and whatever. The shot of him there is playing golf with a vertebrae and a rib from a mastodon. But for him, that was a great start for an elevator pitch, because your goal is to be remembered. Keep it short. Our attention span is second, so active verbs. And you can go on any career website and get a list of action verbs. Have a hook. That first 10 or 15 seconds, you want them to remember you and listen to you. So that hook can be something unusual you did on campus, something unusual that's going on in your job, or the field that you're a part of. It can be an unusual current event. And this is one where many people get it wrong. Pitch yourself, not your ideas. Some people in that elevator pitch want to pitch the latest entrepreneurial idea. I've got this great project or idea, really want some help with it. What you want to do is pitch things that are memorable about you, and that's things that you've already done. So previous accomplishments, skills that you're really good at, activities that have been enjoyable and that are interesting. You know, I just completed my 100th skydive, or whatever it might be. That's something they will remember. Be credible. Why should someone listen to you? So you want to answer this question immediately. Hi, I'm Brian Earl. I graduated from Cornell in communication and education, and I'm really interested in how we can apply this information in the workplace or whatever. You want to practice and rehearse your elevator pitch just a little bit. Just to give you the opportunity, I want to cover these 3 points, and just write those points down and then talk about them. It should be a little different. It should be extemporaneous and not a memorized pitch. So that's being conversational about it. And close, I'd hoped we'd have more time to talk about the close, but basically thank them. You can offer them your business card, and you can go on from there as you go through the process. But again, a reminder, the paper card in that setting is much better than asking the person, can I link up with you? They're going to look at you like you're crazy. So the paper card is much more useful. And this one that came up over and over again in the questions. You know, how do you start, sustain, and conclude a conversation in a room of strangers? One thing you can do is arrange to meet a friend at the event. If there's somebody else in your work group, if there's someone else that you were in school with, that's your wing person. And you're going to feel more comfortable and more confident already because you know somebody there. What you want to do is pledge to each other that you will not hang out together the whole time, that you can help each other out as you arrive and see each other occasionally as you go through the process, but don't hang out just with a friend. Our tendency for networking events, since we don't really like them, is to arrive fashionably late and slip into the event. But if you get there early, you can scope out the room arrangements, you know, where the bar is, whatever it might be, and you'll be forced to meet people because there are fewer participants in the room. So you have to talk to somebody. You can't just hang out alone in the crowd. And it's much easier to find and meet new people when it's a less crowded venue. Here's an example of my class in New York City. These are all individuals that we spent 3 days basically networking in the city as we went from organization to organization, and it was really valuable to them. Remember, you want to have a plan before you even attend the event. So if it's a Cornell event, offer to pass out name tags. You're going to meet everybody there. You'll know a little bit more about them. When I brought my senior communication class to New York City, the students who helped organize the event and the alumni reception talked later about how much they got out of it because they knew everybody as they went through the process. So, son of a gun, there's Margot, who was the alumni contact for our New York City trip, and one of the students who organized the alumni reception with the name tags. And that individual got to meet every single person that came in, talk to them, say a little bit about herself, and it was really a great experience in that regard. And thank you, Margot, for also making it a fun event.
You know, Brian, that's a really good point. In terms of having a plan, you know, I really just encourage, you know, folks to, as part of that plan, think about what you want to know about that other person. And, you know, that can help really keep that conversation flowing and contribute to your plan. Naturally, all human beings love talking about themselves more than they like listening. So the key is to kind of put into your plan learning about that other person and listening to what they have to say.
Right, and often simply by Googling that individual or looking at their corporate company website, you can find out some really interesting questions to ask them. How did you handle this particular event? Or I see that you managed to survive a multiple merger activity and are still with the company. How did you do that? So by checking them out, you can really find out a lot more about the process. All right, with a room full of strangers, what do? Remember, when you approach someone, don't do it with your head down looking at the floor, but make great eye contact. Let them know that you're attacking, you're coming in, smile and look them right in the eye and shake their hands, and then start out with that first question. But you have to fake it a little bit at that point, but really make it a strong, confident approach. You can start out with your friend and introduce each other to your potential target, but remember to always tell your name right away. So you and your friends should get the name out and whatever affiliation you have immediately. Sometimes it's on the name tag, so that's a good start always. Remember, you want to put the name tag on your right shoulder because that's the shoulder that the person is going to see as they shake your hand. We tend to put it on our left because we're right-handed and it's easier, but that means it's away from the handshake and less easy for the person to read. And as Grant just mentioned, I have it right here on the slide, people love to talk about themselves. It's a great and valuable way to start. And one is your career path of progression. Just get them talking about how they started out, you know, what was your major and how did you get to where you are now. That's good for a lot of conversation. And you can also ask probes about some of the events that they describe as they go through it. You can also look for other isolates. If you're a little bit unsure of yourself and you're not really comfortable in a networking event, look for somebody else who looks like you. They will really appreciate you reaching out to them, and the two of you might have a great interaction, and perhaps that person becomes your wing person to approach somebody else. And you again have somebody there to give you a little bit more confidence. So don't forget the power of community. So what helps maintain the interaction? You know, if you share something personal about you, it will often lead to a more personal response by the others. If you keep it really rigid and structured and formal, I did this, I did this, I did this, you know, I was promoted to this, they're not going to be as interested. But if you share something about your family, your avocations, your dreams, your aspirations, then that person is much more likely to say, you know, when I was your age, I really wanted to be a mountain climber, but you know, this happened and this got in the way, and this is where I am now. Asking questions about the challenges of their business and industry, what's going on. I read an article just yesterday, I think it was in DealBook, that said 700 corporations have already mentioned Donald Trump in their annual reports as a potential challenge to their industry and profitability in the future. And I'm not trying to be political, but that's an amazing number, and that's a challenge that may indeed be out there for a number of areas. The conversation needs to be moved from generalities to specifics. So really work on asking a probe that will allow them to give you a very specific example of how they coped with something that you may face in the future, so you can get through that process. And this is the other part about networking that people really forget about. You say, well, I'm going to go to a networking event and I'm done. Networking should really be a part of your weekly plans and activities. So if you have a time during the week when you sort of plan out your week and your activities, or if you have it on your calendar, you're much more likely to do this. So put in your calendar or put in your weekly schedule, I'm going to spend 10 minutes on networking activities, or half hour, 20 minutes, whatever you can spare, and see who you can add to your network in that time period. Scan LinkedIn or other media that you're part of and see if there's someone that you would really like to reach out to or add to your network, and see what you can do as you go through that process. And remember, they don't have to be from just your particular perspective. Leaders in service organizations are terrific resources. The director of your local United Way knows every influencer in decision-making in your community for the most part. So there again, if you can volunteer to be part of a United Way organization and get involved in some of the networks that you have there, you might find it's absolutely a terrific opportunity. There's some things you want to be careful with. I had 3 former students who were in the food industry management program who ended up in the same city. And so they started meeting once a month for lunch, just to talk over the challenges of, you know, how do you deal with a crummy employee, or how do you deal with shrink in the back end or whatever. And someone reported them as potentially price fixing because they had these 3 different food chains all having lunch together. So you want to be careful of the appearance of propriety as you go through it too. There's so many ways now to make connections. You know, old-fashioned email often works just fine, but remember, you don't just send out a request for a connection. You say why and who you are. I was sharing with Grant and the others before we started, when I get a LinkedIn request from someone I don't recognize, or if they don't tell me a little bit about themselves, and I remember me, I had you in class in 2005 or whatever, then I often ignore that request. So give some information as you go through the process. And remember the value of LinkedIn. You can do Venn diagrams with it. So you can search for people in a given career area. You can search for those that have a Cornell background. You can narrow that even further for those who are, you know, a certain age or generation. So use the power of those LinkedIn searches to really provide you with a very targeted group of individuals you might want to work with. I would not use Facebook, as I'm not on Facebook after having contact with almost 20,000 students in class and workshops. it can get messy really quickly, and you don't know what other people are going to do with the information. So you have more control over LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is much more professional. Remember, you can offer something to somebody as a potential way of interacting with them. I'd love to take you to coffee, or can we grab a quick lunch? I'm just 5 blocks away. We could meet so-and-so and pick a place. For social events or activities, tell them, look, I know we're both going to the same event. Can I give you a ride? And you've got private time with them locked in a car with you, where you really have a great opportunity. And also the privacy of an automobile seems to open people up a little bit more. That no one's overhearing them. You're likely to get a lot more interesting conversation riding with someone in a car than you are out on the event floor. Going to some of the conferences and events that I've done in the city or Washington, D.C. or whatever, that time in the car has been priceless as to what we've learned about each other and what we've enjoyed about each other. After you hook up with someone or link up with someone, or after a meeting, hook up was a bad choice of words, I realize, but remind them of your strengths by sending a follow-up note. And one of the questions we had was, I send follow-up notes to people who I've given my business card to, or they've given them to me, and I don't always hear from them. That's fine. You can still include them in your network, and you might send them a note a year after the conference or the event and say, I remember meeting you. I wonder what's changed in your life, or how are things going for you? At this point, I'm doing X. And you never know when one of those random connections might come back and really help you out as you go through the process. I was asked to talk about professionalism as part of this. I suspect from a corporate leader who is having trouble dealing with it, but remember, professionalism should be part of everything that you write, and that includes tweets. You want to make sure that anything you put out is spelled correctly. You can use grammar even in tweets. You don't have to make them totally grammar deficient. And I included a recent email that I received, and this is reproduced exactly as I received it. Hey, you guys, and he could have at least capitalized guys. I know my outline is overdue, and they misspelled overdue. I want to speak to you about capital markets and used the wrong capital for markets. This was a Dyson school major, which really should know that one. I need your advice, and I suspect he meant advice with a C, but I'll accept advise, barely. Please accept, and you got that one wrong too. My apologies. I won't do this again. I forgive him for not putting the apostrophe in, since they don't use grammar anymore. I want to get a good grade in this class. TTFN. And I really had to go to my TAs and ask, what's TTFN? Or ta-ta for now. I sent this email back to the student and said, I'll consider your request when you do this properly. And I didn't correct anything. He still missed the homonyms. So at least he corrected 75% of it. So that's the kind of thing that you really don't want to have people joking about. I've been a part of a lot of organizations or groups where they actually keep a collection of the worst communications that they've received from clients, customers, or whatever, because they've been so poorly put together or sort of humorously put together in the deficiencies that they have. So don't be on one of those lists, please. But Admissions and Financial Aid Group at Cornell keeps a list of the weirdest email addresses, for example, the sexy chick and things like that, but really not professional. Remember that prompt replies are always appreciated. I've put a link to etiquette in LinkedIn, for example, and one of the things they say there is I really try to reply to people within a day or a day and a half at the most. But with anything, with an email, please reply promptly. There's an organization in New York City, a very successful one, where the rule is that you reply within 1 hour of when you are conscious of a phone message or an email. And the person who shared this with me and the class said that you would not believe how efficient that makes our organization. When you know that the boss expects you to reply to every email, every phone call within 1 hour of when you receive it, he said, we have our plans down so well and so carefully that we can see the kind of email it is. We know how we need to respond. We have a plan for it, and it really streamlines the day. Remember to start with a formal address. None of this "hey guys" stuff. Don't even use "hey" for that matter. But use "hello." Don't use "hi." Use "hello" to start out. Address them by their formal address, Mr., Ms., whatever it might be. And later you can be less formal. And you take your clue from how they respond to you. So if they sign it, Brian, then you know the next time you don't have to be so formal. Attention to detail is part of that first impression. So really take time to check your messages. And as you saw in the previous one, the homonyms are the ones that really drive you crazy. Some other things about email that are common sense, but that people miss. Always use a specific subject line. There are many spam filters that if there's no subject line, they will dump it in spam. So you want something in the subject line, no matter what. And if someone writes you and asks, can we go to lunch today? And the lunch is in the subject line, you don't have to leave the same subject line. You can send it back with 12:30 is fine. So the person can look at the email, just hit the subject line, and know what the answer is to the question that they just sent you. It saves time, and it's much more efficient. I receive some of these chain emails where the subject line no longer has anything to do with the conversation that this this conversation is morphed into. So change the subject line to fit what you're doing. I always do the salutation with the person's name, and they'll appreciate that. If you send it out to hi all or things like that, they feel less important. Watch out for late night or multiple emails or contacts in a row. When you send something out at 3 or 4 in the morning, there's somebody who's doing that fairly regularly, and people wonder about that. But also, if you send out 3 emails in the space of 5 or 6 minutes, the person's going to think that you're really not very well organized. So keep that in mind as you go through the process.
And one other thing, just before as we continue down the road of emails, is for all of those that are kind of emailing someone from Cornell, I recommend you put their year on the last part of, or as part of their salutation. So if it's to Brian Earl, put his class year. If it's Grant Stansbury, put my class year. Almost with that, like that's something that automatically usually indicates to the reader that or are connected with their alma mater. So definitely recommend you do that, and hope that helps Tip as well.
Okay, it's a good idea. That recognition of another Cornellian is really important. But remember, in email, you can include the same kind of pleasantries you might meeting someone in the hall by making a comment about something else that's going on, or hope you're surviving this second blizzard we're having or this cold spring. Don't type in capitals. Don't flame or respond in anger. Anytime you have a really angry response to somebody, save it as a draft, sleep on it, and think about it again the next day. And I promise you, you will have changed some of the comments, or at least the adjectives that you use in that angry email. It'll calm you down. You think about it overnight, and it really helps. Don't forward garbage to people. I get weird humor and other things from certain of my contacts, and I ignore it. And it's really too bad that this happens. Be really careful with reply all or cease, copying people. Some of you may still remember the IT consultants for the Johnson School and the hotel school that were having a flaming affair, and one of them punched reply all, and over 400 people received all these steamy messages that they had done for whatever the chain of emails was. That made the national news, and the two people were terminated immediately. So the reply all is a dangerous thing to use. So
just one quick thing that I wanted to jump in with, Brian, was while it is important to kind of stay away from not forwarding sort of let's say Dilbert jokes and things like that, do forward things that are adding value. So let's say your contact is researching mergers and acquisitions that are particular to the hotel industry, like a Marriott purchasing of Starwood. Let's say this was about a year ago and that sort of thing. It might be interesting to forward some information in regard to that. If you believe that the piece is very well written, and it could add some insight and value to your specific contact. It will let other people know that you're thinking about them, and without you having to do a dissertation and do a formal written write-up of material, you can just add value to that other person just by forwarding something and let them know that you're thinking about them.
Right, and that's one of the things that bothers me a little bit about Facebook. You see all these posts about people's family vacations, and I had this for breakfast with a picture of it or whatever, and those people could also be doing exactly what Grant mentioned and posting a link to DealBook. Here's a merger and acquisition that I think you all should be paying attention to, or you can provide that really good content, and people will start to count on you for adding value to their lives with that additional content. So really a good example of what we're talking about. Remember, negativity in emails, reprimands, should all be done in person, not by email. So if you're a boss or a supervisor, if you need to reprimand someone, you do it in person. You don't do it through an email. Remember, almost any email you send is public. You have no idea where that chain of emails is going to end up. Someone may do a reply all accidentally with it. They can CC it to someone. So just think about every email you send, and would you post this on your office door before you send it? And never post confidential information because the internet simply is not safe. So be really careful with that one. So some final things about networking before we go to any questions that have come up. Be sincere, share, help others with their networks. Remember, as second level alums at this point, you're in a position where you should be helping others with their networking. You're at a place in your careers where you really have value to others. And remember, it's a two-way street. Be prepared, that notion of planning ahead, preparing questions, reviewing your elevator pitch, all of that is going to make you seem more comfortable and more confident as you enter different networking events. You go into an event with a positive attitude, not dread. Remember the comments about how valuable it is, and if you go in with a negative attitude or the Lady Macbeth attitude that it's a dirty activity, you're not going to get as much out of it. Send thank you notes. They can be very brief. Email thank you notes are now perfectly legitimate, although when I get a handwritten thank you note, I notice it. I think, wow, that person's really gone the extra mile. Always have business cards with you. And if you want to be really cool, get a really nice business card holder. And with that business card holder, you can put the cards you receive behind yours, and you'll look really classy. In some countries, if you don't have a business card holder, you're not considered very successful. So keep that in mind. People are still better than social networks. So I don't care how many friends you have or how many people that follow you on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. The people that you work with face to face are the ones who are going to really help you and know you the best. Takeaways. Remember that networking can be extremely helpful to your career and your social success, and really don't leave out the notion of how you interact with play groups and athletic coaches and part of your real life. It takes effort and planning, so you want to really think about it in advance. Although it may seem uncomfortable at first, work at it until it becomes more natural. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become with it, and the more people will be drawn to you as a potential networker. Above all, interacting with new people and learning about them should be an enjoyable and a little fun. You never know where a conversation might go when you meet someone for the first time. Some are just marvelous when you see commonalities and things that you share, and the Kevin Bacon effect, where 7 degrees of separation from virtually anybody, it's out there. So get out there and do it, and the Cornell events are a wonderful starting point. So for any of you out there who have said you're a little shy or a little reticent, and you're near one of the events that's happening tonight, make yourself go and see if you can apply some of the things we've talked about in this very brief thing. This is a networking slide that I just want to share an example of this with you. Wayne Price, the gentleman on the left, was a starving artist in New York City who was doing indie films. One of his most successful ones was The Doorman. And he came to this networking event in New York specifically to ask me one question. He said, I know that one of your advisees was Don Lee, an executive producer in the film industry. Can you possibly share his contact information with me? And I said, I can do better than that. Turn around, he's standing right behind you. And Don had come to the event as well. And so the two of them were able to share experiences, and Don made me feel better about the process and what he was doing as a young indie filmmaker. By the way, Don's film coming out in December is The Greatest Show on Earth, I believe, Barnum and Bailey. So Zac Efron and some others. So it should be a good movie. Some additional resources. I mentioned the Catalyst.org. That was actually an organization where I took my class, and that's a picture I took during our visit in their library. Vault.com, Harvard Business Review, Fortune, Career Builder. These are just a few that I used in putting together the material for today. And if you search under networking with any of those organizations, you will find some really good information. We were asked several questions about LinkedIn etiquette, and this is a very well done piece, the 20 do's and don'ts. I'm sure you can find it, but remember with LinkedIn, always share something about yourself. You don't just throw it in as a random, I'd like to connect with you, but do it in a personal manner. And finally, my email is there, and for any of you whose question is not answered through this or the end here, please send me a note, and I will do my best to answer your question. We thought the question about making the transition from the military was probably a little too specific for the whole group. And here's a picture again of my class. This was at Bloomberg. They really spent 2 or 3 days networking with alums in New York City, and it was the kind of thing that made them feel more comfortable in the process. So by immersing them in it for those 3 solid days, they really felt comfortable approaching anyone after they'd been through this process. So that's what we want you to do, and now we'll answer any questions.
Yeah, the one again, we want to go back to that theme of how do introverts kind of break the ice and get out there and network. That question came from a number of folks: Lily, Bonga, Tanya, Florenthal, Amy, Killerun, Shira Clapper, and Paul Moore Toronto, all asked that same question. Any advice, Brian?
Well, the advice is preparation makes you feel more comfortable or more confident. So anything you can do to prepare yourself, think about that elevator pitch. What would you like people to hear about you? And the other one is questions that you can ask the first person that you meet. What industry you're in, what was your career path from Cornell, or where did you go to school? I'm considering getting an MBA. What do you think? Or just have questions that allow the other person to share their knowledge and experience. And as you mentioned, people love to talk about themselves. So ask questions that will enable them to do that.
Okay. And then, one question that came up as we were going through this chat was from Anita Carr. Hi, Anita. She was wondering, how do you handle LinkedIn networking? This has come up a number of different ways from a couple of different folks. I'll take this one because I think it's rather important in how I'm going to address it. Number one, I would use LinkedIn as a way to understand if you're trying to use LinkedIn to connect with a company, what I would do is do exactly that. Figure out how to connect with the company. From there, connect with the people. So, like, let's say if it's Sage Hospitality where I happen to work, what are the things that Sage Hospitality is doing out in the community? Is there something you can join them for, such as a community event? When do they do those events? Those are the kinds of things you can use LinkedIn for, besides just hitting a specific contact. So I'm encouraging everybody to just be creative, figure out how you can connect and build the relationship rather than make it an overnight thing. Maybe it's 6 months from now, the company's doing something. How can you get to that and build your relationship? Because we all know after we're done with the good days of community events, we usually do what? Go out and have a little drink, have a little hors d'oeuvres. This is what we do. So, that's the time when you start building those specific relationships. I hope that helps, Anita. Another question came from Rebecca Counter. Thank you for your question on virtual networking. So we can both take this one, Brian. I think the question was basically, how do you recommend connecting with people virtually and that sort of thing? I'm comfortable kind of going at this one if you want, but any advice there?
You answer it first, and then I'll just chime in.
So when it comes to virtual networking, let's say, I'm in Colorado, let's say somebody's in New York, I haven't met them before, or it's through a chat room or something like that. I'll start the conversation very much just like I would in the room, with a how are you doing today? And then trying to build the relationship from that base level to a top floor level, if you will. By just getting to know them. I'm asking questions that are helping me get to know the person, not trying to sell all, quote unquote, sell all of the things that I have to offer right up front. If someone asks me what I do, I'll let them know. But in general, I'm trying to figure out what are the things that I want to know about Brian. What are those, oh, wow, he knows a lot about etiquette. I typically might struggle at dinner table etiquette. What does he know that he can let me know? So I'm going to ask questions that are specific to his crafts, specific to helping me digest information that's going to ultimately make me better. And people will pick up on that.
Okay, and again, by finding out a little bit about them, their background information, when I found out that one of the Dysons runs a racing program, for example, and my son and I go to Watkins Glen all the time, next time I run into them, just ask about how's the vintage racing going or how's the racing program, and boom, I'm talking to one of the benefactors of the Dyson name at Cornell, and he's having a ball because I knew a little bit more about him from the background that I had studied a little.
And then we had one question. I think Linda, we wanted to unmute Kiva Davis. She had a general question, but we don't know what it was. We couldn't see it in the chat. Linda, do we want to do that now? If not, we can kind of continue rolling through. So just let me know where you'd like to go. Oh, you're absolutely welcome, Rebecca.
She's not on the call anymore.
Oh, she's disappeared.
Okay, no worries. Disappearing is allowed. So let's go to kind of like any. We'll address the military question a little later. Okay, this one was really important. We want to know, Brian, how to network with the executive suite at your current company. What is your advice?
Well, number one, you will have opportunities to do that are part of your business responsibilities. So that C-suite is going to be at motivational events, if you will, at announcement events. So be aware of when they're going to be at something, and then make sure that you're there as well. Don't blow it off as well. I know all about that product launch, so I don't have to be there. No, be there so that you're visible and you have the opportunity to interact. If you don't take the opportunities or make the opportunities, you go nowhere as far as interacting with them. And the other part is again, show interest in them and ask them questions about what they know well, rather than try to sell your idea and who you are right away.
And then I'm definitely being put on notice by Linda, everybody, that we got about 4 minutes left, so we are watching the time. One item that did come up that I'll take is, if it's okay with you, Brian, is basically, is cold calling effective? Why don't you take this one and I'll jump in if we have time.
Well, cold calling and cold promotions are 3 to 5% effective, period. And we know that from just the research on launches like that. So I think the person-to-person cold call can be much more effective than that 3 to 5%. If you know something about the person and can tell them right away that you're sincere about this isn't a solicitation, you're not out to get money from them or whatever, and kind of allay the fears that they might have as to where this call is going to go. So make it clear right from the start what it is that you're looking for and why you're calling.
Okay, and we're gonna coin a phrase on this call. I'm gonna call it the cold give. So I find that, rather than cold call, cold email. Look, if somebody's been contributing to you either over, different materials that they've posted in the past or YouTube videos, that sort of thing, give something sincerely from your heart. Like, what's something, you don't have to make it Mercedes-Benz. What's something that that would help that person? So for me, I ended up buying a portable charger for somebody that was constantly using 3 phones and a tablet. And I had digested so much content that they had put on YouTube. Is not a Cornell graduate, but I just felt like, this person could probably use this, and I just gifted it. And so in some cases, think about those small things that you can do to add to somebody else. And that is usually 100% response rate.
Okay.
Got 2 minutes left.
Earlier you'd mentioned that, after work is when a lot of networking takes place, when you go out for a drink or a snack or, grab something to eat on the way home or whatever. And just last night, 2 of my former students invited me to have a beer with them, just to talk over, what's going on in their careers and what's going on. And we've done this almost once a month now for a couple of years. And they often invite other parts of their network to come and some of the synergies and ideas that have gone through this are fabulous. We spent one whole evening talking about philanthropy in Ithaca and what kinds of things we can do as individuals to help and support that. So the networking doesn't necessarily be strictly about career. It can be supporting the community in a lot of ways.
Awesome. And Margot or Linda, do you want to wrap things up?
Yes. We'll go ahead and let's thank Brian and Grant, who is the Senior Corporate Director of Revenue Management for Sage Hospitality's Branded Division. Thank you so much, Grant, for moderating this, and thank you, Brian, for giving us all these tips. I hope those that are in San Francisco and New York City can join their peers, their colleagues, their alumni, fellow alumni for the event, and looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching, and go Red Sox.